Shabbat Shalom, dear community family. It is always a pleasure to wish you a good Shabbos, particularly as we move into this coming Shabbos, continuing the wonderful trajectory of 7 weeks of consolation, 7 weeks of God expressing his deep sense of love and commitment to us, who will never abandon us under any circumstances. And even when temporarily it seems like he is not with us, he always is there in the foreground or in the background, making sure that we will sustain any challenges that come our way. And as we read this Torah portion, we read about the second set of tablets that Moses brought to the Jewish people. After having served the calf and after being rejected by God, God says, I forgive you as you ask on Yom Kippur, and Moses brings the second tablets. He also reminds the Jews of his having shattered the first set of tablets. And it's interesting to note, why were those tablets shattered? Why were they not just put back in place, brought back to God, hidden in a cave? Why shattered? The Midrash tells us that this rock was a massive, massive weight that a human being could not carry. Its size, its depth, 6 handbreadths of a square length, breadth, and depth. Massive. This rock, Moses himself could not carry down the mountain by his own personal strength. How did it carry it? It was the energy of God within it. God had placed, so to speak, his soul into the rock. He wrote the letters by himself. The energy of God's presence in his most pristine force, in his most unadulterated, uncondensed power, was in that rock. He shared himself with us in that rock. It wasn't the rock that was carried by Moses. It was the rock that was carried on its own by God's presence within it, like a human being's soul carries a big body that carries that weight because the soul itself is alive. Similarly, the rock itself was alive with the holiness that God's presence brought into it. When Moses came down and saw the Jewish people rejecting God with the idol, God's presence left the rock. That energy left and it elevated. It went back into suspension, into its own space, back to its origin. The rock was left bereft as a rock without a soul, without a godly soul, with its physical reality, but its weight not being buoyed, not being carried by godly presence. Our lives are constantly carried by God. Our loads, our challenges are constantly brought into a positive manner by God. It is God's energy that carries us. And that's the story throughout history. When we are close to our God, when we consciously bring God out of our subconscious essence in our soul, and we bring him into the presence of our consciousness, he carries the rocks for us in every way, and they become a light load, easily traversed, and bringing us only joy and happiness and optimism, and of course, each day, one day closer to the coming of Mashiach and our final absolute redemption. Shabbat Shalom.